India has a rich tradition of consuming millets dating all the way back to the Harappan civilization. However, with time, we seem to have forgotten the incredible benefits of these grains. The Indian authorities have recognized the need for change and are determined to make millets a staple in our lives once again. Hello and welcome to this special initiative, ITC and News 18's Mission Millets, a powerful campaign aimed at spreading awareness about the nutritional and health benefits of millets. I am Vinaya Deshpande. And to join me for this insightful conversation today, I have with me Mr. S. Sivakumar, the Group Head of Agri and IT Businesses, ITC Limited. Mr. Sivakumar, welcome on the show.
Great pleasure joining you, Vinaya.
Thank you, sir. Let me begin the conversation by asking you, India is a leading producer of millets. As per the 2020 data, 41% of the global production of millet happened in India. Now, how do we leverage this position to lead a global millet revolution?
Great start. Millets get consumed in many different ways. There is usage as feed, there is usage even for fuel, there is malting for the breweries. But the real usage that we would like to scale up as part of the newer revolution that you're talking about is really as food usage, the nutritious value of that. So in addition to the volume that you talked about in production that India has, I think what is even more important is really the range of millets that we produce. There are obviously major millets, the jowar, bajra and all of that, and also minor millets, a whole range, the kodo and those kind of things, which ensure that the all range of nutritious benefits really come across for these products. And how do you bring across these nutritional qualities to the consumer, whether it's in the domestic market or global? That's where the opportunity is. How do you communicate these traits and the benefits and scale up this consumption? Because different millets are best used in different recipes, in different products. And in fact, APEDA has done a great job recently of putting together where is the opportunity, what scale we can do at a global level also. From under $100 million export today, after estimating where the demand could be, by 2030, the possibility is all the way up to $2 billion. It can be taken making use of all these communication opportunities.
So, in fact, that is my next question. Looking at the fact that, millet-based products are coming on the shelves these days, how do you increase their marketability both in the domestic market as well as the international market?
Obviously, millets have been a part of core diet in India and some parts of the world also, in Africa, Southeast Asia. But as the years progressed and Green Revolution came in, food production expanded, millets took somewhat a backseat. The opportunity is really to bring the nutritional qualities to the fore and ensure that the consumer is aware of those issues. There are obviously a couple of concerns that the consumers have in terms of how do I prepare these? Do I need to soak, and do I need to, what kind of time it takes? The taste is a little different from the grains that I'm used to. So as part of recipe creation, a range of products that can be brought to the consumer, that's where the opportunity is in scaling up the consumption also.
So we will come back to this aspect during the later part of our conversation, but let me also ask you, this year 2023 has been declared as the International Year of Millets by the UN. Now, how do we use this in order to promote not just the consumption but also production of millets?
Production, a lot of efforts have been happening. In fact, interesting new varieties, a lot of breeder seed. From the time Indian government started focusing on millets as an area, plenty of activity happened on production. And some of that obviously has to go up in terms of yield improvements and getting the farmers to adopt the crops. But it's on the demand side that a lot more work that needs to happen. And the International Year of Millets is really creating that kind of a buzz. Now we are towards almost the fag end of the year. And but throughout the year, there is a lot more awareness, and G20 has come in very handy in terms of communicating, whether it's in banquets or in gifting, every single area. I think it's in the demand side that a lot more push is happening, and that will really help also in balancing and getting the offtake for the production that is occurring.
So let me move to the next question. We are a land of great diversity, but it's not just diversity, it's disparity as well. We know that over 32% of India's children are underweight and over 59% of India's women are anemic. Now when we have such nutritional challenges, how can millets be helpful in fighting such a nutritional challenge?
I think it's a great solution for this very problem. You know, the world and India, for large purposes, solve the food self-sufficiency challenge. But there is a hidden hunger, and it's all these actually in terms of malnutrition and anemia and all of that. That's where millets can really play a great role. You know, the micronutrient-rich millets, whether it is iron deficiency, it can sort, or calcium, or magnesium, or zinc. Many of these micronutrients exist. And there is also presence of vitamins, particularly the B complex related vitamins which are there. And on top of it, the dietary fiber that exists in millets ensure that the digestibility is much better, and as a result the nutrition get absorbed. And therefore the challenges of anemia and malnutrition, whether it is in the children or in adolescent girls or in lactating mothers, wherever, I think this whole thing helps. And with the benefit of the antioxidant that exists, many of the other potential diseases can also be combated with the millets that are there. So therefore, the opportunity is also in using millets into the various government feeding programs. The people who cannot afford food, how do you get more nutrition-rich food through these kind of programs? That opportunity certainly exists in addition to the market that we talked about, where millets have an opportunity.
So we're talking so much about this magic grain. We're more than excited to actually go and visit a field where these grains are produced.
No, that's a great idea. Let's talk around in a millet farm, sorghum in this area. That will be great.
Let's go, sir.
There's a link to processing.
So we cannot understate the importance of policy. Do we also expect some policy interventions or some incentives that will be given with this respect?
No, obviously agriculture has agnostic to crops. There are plenty of schemes which are there at both a national level as well as at various state level along the whole value chain. I think what is more important from a millet perspective to do is to look at how do you get green credits for millet. You know, it is great for climate, natural resources, not just for the consumer and the farmer. And therefore, how do you get a higher benefit from green credits or carbon credits? I think some kind of already we have, because the larger commitment towards net zero, there is some progress that is happening. I think as guidelines and rules get framed, hopefully millets also will come in and get some incremental income for the farmers through this route. Not everything which is going to farmer is paid for by the consumer, because demand has to go up also. And therefore, in the form of a carbon pricing, if something were to come and if the policy measure is really directing towards it, that's an opportunity. And pre-processing and post-processing, there are funds already existing, Agri-Infrastructure Fund, FPO scheme, and in agriculture per se, there are various schemes also. I think all of them can do for millets as well as they do for some of the other crops.
So we all know millets as extremely environment friendly and climate friendly crops. So on one hand, we want the millet production to rise. On the other hand, we want their nature as environment friendly crops to continue. So what are the kind of changes that one should bring in the agricultural practices to make sure that this is a sustainable growth?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you can't end up consuming a lot more natural resource, which is the strength of this crop, and yet the yields need to further improve from where they are to raise the farmer profitability and keep the consumer price at the other end competitive. It is really in terms of getting the right cultivars for different kind of traits and for different kind of regions. I think a lot more tailor making of the varieties need to happen. I think that's an R&D effort which is going on now at a breeder level and subsequent replication at a farm level. And once the right seed is really doing the heavy lifting as far as yield improvement is concerned, farmer has to adopt complete package of practices. right from right method of planting to right method of pest management to right harvesting practices and post-harvest treatment. The entire package of practices need to be also followed right, and further the extension work has to happen, whether it is happening from private sector companies like ITC or whether it is coming through the government agencies. How do you get the farmers to adopt complete package of practice is going to be the other angle that really will help in yield improvement.
So, sir, Mission Millets wants to revive millets in the Indian kitchens and spread more awareness about it. How is ITC planning to position itself to push for this?
See, in case of millets, production existed, demand for nutritious consumption was not catching up. When this catches up, production has to keep pace. And for consumption to go up, you need right recipes and right products, right cooking methods. I think how do you get all of this in a whole systemic fashion as opposed to piecemeal working on one at a silo kind of a level? I think the ITC mission.
So, extremely insightful conversation here. We will continue this interesting conversation, but on the other side of the break. Welcome back to Mission Millets, where we will continue with our interesting conversation with Mr. S. Sivakumar. Sir, welcome back.
Sure.
Going ahead with the point that we left last time, with respect to Mission Millets, it's important to have a dialogue with the doctors, the nutritionists, as well as the policymakers. How do you think these dialogues will help integrate millets into the Indian lifestyle and will help revive them?
If there is one thing that there is a unison among different stakeholders, whether it's policymakers and nutritionists or doctors that you mentioned, or for that matter among conscious consumers and sustainable agriculture practitioners and many other people, that millets is probably a great solution for many ills of the society today, whether it's from the production perspective or from the consumption perspective. I think when the dialogue happens among all these stakeholders and a message of credibility gets communicated to influential consumers, and then that message multiplies among more common people. So getting the consumption expanded is something which will get driven in these steps, and therefore the dialogue to create credible messages as to what consumption opportunities are right and when consumption of millets is right, and some of those kind of messages when they get formed, it's a great opportunity for expanding consumption.
So, sir, the year 2023 has been announced as the International Year of Millets. With respect to that, how does ITC plan to amplify its efforts in order to revive millets in the Indian kitchens?
Yeah, so earlier I talked about the ITC Mission Millets and convergence across the hotels, food and agri to see how do you get a systemic angle. Now I think if you just focus on the consumption side of it and how do you expand it among the kitchens, I think there are two ends of engagement. One is on developing products which are good for you as a consumer for different occasions as well as different consumption contexts. So whether it is center of plate products like flours made with millets or flour mixes. So Ashirwad has a whole range now in terms of Ashirwad Ragi Atta, Ashirwad multi-millet mix as well as Ashirwad gluten-free atta. So I think some of these, depending on the taste palettes and regions, people would see in terms of how do you get now millets into center of my plate. There's also for consumption context like snacking. There are cookies now, Sunfeast Farmlight millet cookies using multiple millets again, shooting different flavors. That is the other opportunity. Further work is happening on the yippee noodles as well as in bingo tede mede, as well as also in infusing some millets into the Ashirwad ready to prepare poha. So I think creating multiple products is one route that one is taking from this end of the market. Now, a little while ago we also talked about the anemia and malnutrition and all of that. So through our social initiatives, there is two programs called Bal Poshan and Samposhan. Through Bal Poshan, there is an effort at reducing malnutrition among kids with infusion of millets into their diets, and again through Samposhan, through different age groups, particularly the lactating mothers and young adolescent women. So putting in millets into their diets is the other. So they are right at this point of time in terms of what impact it has is being tested around multiple locations in eastern UP and southern Gujarat and northern Karnataka. I think effort is getting it from both sides of the market through this consumption expansion.
So looking into the future in terms of a broader perspective, what is the role of millets when it comes to sustainable agriculture, nutrition and public health in India?
You know, we talked about public health context a little bit to ensure that how do you get into government feeding programs for vulnerable segments. On the production side in sustainable agriculture, there is a really big situation now in terms of climate change. So millets are in a position to both be more climate resilient because it can be grown in different kinds of agroclimatic contexts in terms of different kind of soils, different kind of weather conditions, temperature levels and so on. And it also can contribute to mitigating climate impact. You know, with much less use of fertilizer, the emissions are far fewer. It's also what is called a C4 crop. That means less carbon dioxide is released into atmosphere. So there is a mitigation aspect also. And the water consumption compared to other grains, as much as 33% lower water is consumed in millets. So that angle of how does it really become more environment friendly and sustainable agriculture really complements the consumer benefits in terms of nutrition as well as public health in terms of the feeding programs for vulnerable segments.
So moving ahead, and I believe that's the last question that we are going to ask you. With respect to this insightful discussion with Mr. S. Sivakumar, it's clear that the Mission Millets initiative driven by ITC and News 18 Network carries the torch of change, lighting the path towards a millet and health revolution in our country. But remember, this journey doesn't end here. It begins at our homes, in our kitchens and in our daily choices. Let's pledge to make millets an integral part of our daily diets, one meal at a time. Goodbye and thank you for watching.